One of the last ways that Earth scientists look at Earth's surface is by using satellites and computers. So, what exactly can satellites do? For example, in the 1900s, a deadly hurricane hit Galveston, Texas, and the storm first was spotted at sea on Monday, August 27th in 1900. It was a tropical storm when it hit Cuba on September 3rd, but by September 8th, it had gained strength to be a hurricane over the Gulf of Mexico. Due to advanced warnings, because of our knowledge and readings from satellites, due to no advanced warning, because we didn't have information from satellites, more than 8,000 people died. So, satellites are in space or in Earth's atmosphere, and they orbit Earth. And they can contain many different instruments that help us see and track hurricanes and other weather forecasts. So one type of satellite is a satellite that has a geostationary orbit. So the word stationary means to stand still, or that it's not moving. So a geostationary orbit satellite does not move, but it appears to be moving because the Earth is moving. These satellites are located 36,000 kilometers above Earth, and it takes 24 hours to complete one complete rotation. So like I said, the satellite stays over the same spot because it is not moving. And so geostationary orbit satellites include weather satellites and communication satellites. Another type of satellite could have a polar orbit. This is a satellite that orbits at a distance of several hundred kilometers from Earth. In one complete orbit, orbits around Earth from the North Pole to the South Pole about every 90 minutes. So it follows this red line here, North Pole to South Pole, and then back up. And so Earth only slightly rotates underneath that satellite in 90 minutes. And then in a whole day, the entire satellite will see the entire Earth. Again, weather satellites can use this type of orbit, and land and ocean observations are gained from these satellites because, as you can see, they track over the ocean as well as the continents. Scientific satellites. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, better known as NASA, has launched a ton of satellites to help study Earth. They're operated by several government agencies such as NASA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration called NOAA, and then the United States Geological Survey also uses them. And so these are satellites that share data with all these different organizations. These satellites will measure temperatures of the land and ocean, record amounts of gas in the atmosphere such as water vapor and carbon dioxide. They measure their height above the ocean, and this is a very precise measurement that helps us measure sea level. And then they measure the ability of the surface to reflect various colors of light, and that indicates plant life. And so all of these pieces of information get used by these different agencies to piece together like a weather forecast, track hurricanes, and things like that. So in 1993, the U.S. military launched 24 satellites to help soldiers locate their positions on the battlefield. We called these global positioning systems, or part of the global positioning system. Each of these require a GPS receiver. They detect the radio signals from the nearby GPS satellites, and it will precisely lock on each satellite in the receiver. And the receiver measures the time for the radio signals from the satellite that come from the satellite to reach the receiver. The receiver uses the time and the speed of the radio signals to calculate the distance between the receiver and the satellite. It will require 4 satellites to get its position on Earth's surface. The more satellites it uses, the more precise and accurate the position on Earth is. So here's an example of a GPS receiver. And then here are 4 satellites. Nowadays, we have our GPS receiver. It's not as obvious, but they're much smaller. They're found on our phones, in our cars. Using GPS is much more common. So computer generated maps. So prior to the 20th century and the early 21st centuries, map makers sent people out into the field to determine the boundaries and locations for various features for maps. Borders were used to mark geological features, but today people in the field use GPS receivers to mark locations of features. We use satellite images and computers to draw maps now. The computers break apart fine details of satellite images and store the pieces of information and put them back together to make maps. So we're looking at very, very small pieces that build together to make a bigger picture. So each of those small pieces have a ton of detail, which then gets transferred into the bigger picture. Graphic Information System, or GIS, is an information system that links data to a particular location. So for example, the number of people living in an area or types of plants and soil, location of groundwater or levels in rainfall. These types of maps link information to other pieces of information. So you use your GPS receiver and store that information in a computer for later processing and map making. Geologists use GIS to make maps of natural resources, and city leaders might like these resources or link these resources to where people live and help them plan the growth of cities and communities. So this is an example of a computer-generated GIS map. So it shows your location. So I think it's broken down by about counties. And then the counties that are colored in purple have some water contamination going on. And so it's linking the location to water contamination. That's an example of GIS.